So in the last class, we learned about Hermitian operators. Okay. So now remember one thing, we will also look at some examples later, but do remember one thing that operators, right? These are can be written in two ways. One is the discrete way, and if you write it in the discrete way, basically it becomes a matrix representation. Okay, so these operators are basically matrices if you write it in a discrete manner. But if you write it in a continuous manner, then they become something like differential equation or some form like that, right? So, for example, d by dx, that is an operator, okay? Or sometimes x, that is also an operator, okay? But these are in the continuous representation. But if you look at it in the discrete representation, then they are often written in terms of matrices. And so, and when it is discrete, then these vectors, right? These state vectors, these are also written in terms of vectors, okay? Like how you have a column vector. So this ket is often a column vector and a bra is often a row vector. Okay, so when this matrix, right? So A is then the matrix because it's the discrete representation. So this matrix then acts on the vector, and so you do a matrix multiplication, sort of like you apply the matrix on the vector. So it's basically a matrix multiplication, and then that can be multiplied with the ket in this case, for example. So this is something that will come up again and again, especially when you start solving the actual problems of quantum mechanics, which we will start in maybe another 2-3 weeks. Okay, but then you will see that mostly when you're looking at operators, either you're dealing in the continuous space, and if it is continuous, then you'll encounter operators like x, d by dx, d square by dx square, so on and so forth. And in that case, your state vectors, this will not be as a vector, but this will be like a wave function. So it will be in a continuous representation. Okay, but if the operators are discrete, then they will, if the entire treatment of the problem is in the discrete space, then you will see that the operator becomes a matrix and the state vector becomes a vector. Okay, so this is something we will encounter. So I'm just saying it now itself because when we start doing problems, we will have to keep that in mind. Okay, so in the last class we looked at Hermitian operators, and we looked at the various rules of Hermitian conjugate, right? How to take a dagger, what happens if you take two daggers, right? And so on and so forth. Uh, then this type of function, right? Like you see here, there is a ket and then there is a bra. So this type of function, this is an operator actually. And we will learn about it in the next class. But this type of thing is also represented. This is actually an operator because because you see, I told you state vectors are vectors. Okay, so a ket is a column vector and a bra is a row vector. Now you just imagine you're multiplying a column vector with a row vector. Okay, column vector means it has n number of rows and one column, right? And a row vector, so the row vector will have one row and n number of columns. So when you multiply these two, when you do matrix multiplication over these, what will you get? You'll get an n cross n matrix. Okay. So if you get an n cross n matrix, that becomes an operator actually. So this is actually an operator. Okay, but this operator is made up of the two state vectors basically, but it is an operator. Okay, so we'll look at this as well, maybe in the next class. All right. So then these are the different rules how to, if you apply dagger to a bra or you apply dagger to a ket, how it becomes different, right? So those are the different rules here. And then we talked about Hermitian and skew Hermitian operators. So Hermitian operator obviously means that A is equal to A dagger, and a skew Hermitian will mean A is equal to minus A dagger or B equal to minus B dagger. Right? This is a skew Hermitian operator. And so these kind of operations where you have psi B phi, these kind of operations will also follow the rule of whether the operator is Hermitian or skew Hermitian. Okay. So then we looked at whether the following operators are Hermitian or not. Then we also looked at projection operators. So projection operators are right. So there are two conditions for an operator to be a projection operator. One condition is that P dagger equal to P. This is the same as the Hermitian operator condition. In addition to this, there is another condition, which is P square is equal to P. Okay. So if both these conditions are satisfied, then you say that the operator P is a projection operator. All right. Okay. So then we looked at some properties of the projection operator. So we said that if both P1 and P2 are projection operators, then the product of this also becomes a projection operator. And the product of the two projection operators is also a projection operator. Okay, then sum of two projection operators is generally not a projection operator. And then two projection operators is said to be orthogonal if their product is 0. Okay, so generally any two operators, okay, generally any two operators, if you say that the product is 0, you might think that, okay, that those operators are orthogonal. Similarly, for any two state vectors also, if the product of the two state vectors or the scalar product, right? In the case of state vectors, you don't just say a product, you say a scalar product. So if the scalar product, basically you're multiplying a bra with a ket. So that kind of a product. So if that is 0, then you say that the two state vectors are orthogonal to each other. Then you had this for a sum of projection operators P1 plus P2 plus P3, etc. to be a projection operator, it is necessary and sufficient these projection operators be mutually orthogonal. Okay, so and then we started looking at commutator algebra. All right, so commutator algebra is very important. At least first thing you should remember is what is the definition of a commutator. So the commutator AB is defined as AB minus BA. This, of course, you need to remember. And then you should also remember what is an anti-commutator. So as the name suggests, anti-commutator is the kind of something like the opposite or complementary to the commutator. So anti-commutator is AB plus BA. Okay. And then the most, okay, and then these are something that we will derive also. But for now, you can just remember that X, PX, commutator of X with PX is IH cross I operator. Okay, and then one of the important, so these are pretty obvious. Like if you just use the definition of commutator, you will get these kind of rules which is anti-symmetry. That is AB is equal to minus BA, and linearity also you can see very trivially. Hermitian conjugate also you can kind of see whenever anyway you have a Hermitian conjugate, you kind of reverse the order and take the conjugates, right? So that is what you're doing here also. But these two rules, distributivity, okay, the distributivity rules, these are very important, and you should remember what the pattern is. So if you remember this pattern for the distributivity rules, then it becomes very easy to solve even complicated problems. That's why it's important that you remember these rules. So if you don't remember the other rules also, it is fine because you can always derive those other rules from the distributivity rule and from knowing the definition of the commutator. But that's why this one is very important. So you should know that when B is on the left hand side and you want to take it out, it will always go to the left. And if you want to take C out, but it is on the right hand side, right? So then C will go to the right. So this is the rule. And similarly for the next one. This you need to remember. So with these commutator rules yesterday, and this was just a small problem, but yesterday we derived what? The uncertainty relation. Okay. So finally we got that the uncertainty relation turned out to be, what was it? It was half into, right? So the uncertainty of two operators, A and B, which is delta A, delta B, these are the uncertainties. It was greater than or equal to half into modulus of the expectation value of the commutator AB. Okay, so this is something, this is a very important general, you can say it is a general uncertainty relation. Okay, because this uncertainty relation can be applied to any operator, right? Now this is pretty general. A and B can be any operator. Okay. So, and then using this, we also got what is delta x, delta ps, which we have already seen earlier, but now we actually could derive it, right? Using these conditions. Okay. So this turned out to be greater than or equal to h cross by 2. All right. So now I'll move on to the next part. So we have already seen some part of what is an operator. We have seen already what is a Hermitian operator. Now we need to see what is the function of an operator. Okay, so what if some function is created using a set of operators or using a single operator, but using a plus a square or something like that. That could be a function, or e power a is another function, right? Or a square is a function. So all of this. So if f of a is a function of operator a, and if a is a linear operator, okay, then we can do Taylor expansion of f of a. Okay, so any f of a, and if a is a linear operator, we can always do Taylor expansion of f of a. Okay, so how will we do Taylor expansion? So in any case, Taylor expansion is always written as summation into some constant into the A, right? Whatever the argument is. In this case, the argument is A, right? Operator A. So there it will be A power n, right? That is the general format of Taylor expansion. But of course, for different functions, you'll have different kind of formulas that you get. Okay, so if f of a is e power a is some constant into a operator, right? If this is the form of f of a, then we can always do Taylor. We know what is the uh, Taylor expansion of exponentials. So the Taylor expansion of exponential is 1 plus argument. So the argument here is a operator. So here it will be 1 plus a into a operator plus a square into a operator square by 2 factorial plus a cube into a operator cube by 3 factorial and so on. Okay, so the Taylor expansion turns out to be of this format. Okay. So if you have a function of a, and if you have some complicated function, and if the operator is linear on its own, then you can always do it this way. Okay. Now, right. So you write the f of a, the function of the operator, in terms of a Taylor expansion. All right. So now let's look at what are the commutators involving the function operator. So we know that, let's assume for now that some two operators A and B, they commute with each other, which means that the commutation of A comma B is 0. Okay, so let's say if this is true, then we can say that commutation of B with f of A is also 0. And commutation of a with f of a is also 0. And commutation of a power n with f of a is also 0. Okay. And if there are two different functions of the a operator, the commutation of those are also 0. Which means that all of these things commute with each other. Okay, A and B commute with each other, f of a and a commute with each other, B and f of a commute with each other, f of a and g of a commute with each other, and so on. So all of these are valid. The proof of this you can see in the textbook, so I'm not really going into the proof because that is not so important for us. But if anyone is interested, you can look at it in the book. All right. So, but what will be the Hermitian adjoint of the function operators, right? So if you have an operator which is f of a, so there is already an operator that you have defined which is a. Now you want to take a function of the a operator, and if you take the adjoint of that, okay. So if you take the dagger of that, then of course what you will get, you'll get f star of a dagger. So wherever you have a in the function, it will become as a dagger, and wherever you have a complex number, it will become the complex conjugate of that. So if you have plus I, it will become minus I. If you have minus I, it will become plus I. Okay, and wherever you have a, it will become a dagger. So that is how you take a Hermitian adjoint of function operators. Now there are some notes. If A is Hermitian, now suppose we know that here we are not assuming that A is Hermitian. We are just taking the Hermitian adjoint and seeing what is happening. But suppose if A is Hermitian, then f of A is not necessarily Hermitian. Okay, this is something you need to remember. So f of a will only be Hermitian if f is a real function. That is, there are no like complex numbers or complex coefficients in that. So f of a is only Hermitian if f is a real function and a is also Hermitian. So only when these two conditions are satisfied, we will say that f of a is a Hermitian. Then these are some of the other properties. So e power a of whole dagger means e power a dagger. Okay, e power I a whole dagger, like I told you, wherever you have I becomes minus I, and wherever you have a becomes a dagger. So that's what we are getting here. E power minus I into a dagger. Okay, so the complex number becomes its complex conjugate, and a becomes the a dagger. Here also e power I alpha a whole dagger. Here we are assuming that that alpha in general is a complex number, and we'll get e power minus I into alpha star into a dagger. Okay, so you have to remember in general f of a is not Hermitian even if a is Hermitian. So f of a will only be Hermitian if all these alpha I and all is not there. That is, the function itself is real and a is also Hermitian. Only then f of a will be Hermitian. Okay, all right. So next, some relations involving function operators. Okay. So in general, obviously we know that in general A and B do not commute. Okay. Let's say we have two operators. In general, we can say, okay, maybe the two operators do not commute unless we have checked it. Okay. So now, if A and B do not commute, then we know that B and f of A also do not commute. So the commutation of B and f of A will give you some value which is not equal to 0. Okay. So this is one of the rules. Then second is if you have e power A into e power B, okay, because these A and B are operators, we cannot simply use the general algebraic type of rules here. Okay, we cannot say that e power a into a power b is equal to e power a plus b. No, that is not true. Okay, so this is something. So what is it equal to then? It is equal to, so e power a into e power b is equal to e power a plus b into e power half into commutation of AB. Okay, this is the rule. So also you can prove it. Basically, what you have to do, you have to write e power a, e power b in terms of the Taylor expansion, and if you do that, you will get this relation. Okay, so doing that and using the commutation relations and stuff, you will get this relation. Okay, so you can prove this. Similarly, if you have this kind of an operator, which is e power a into b into e power minus a, this is written as this kind of a general form. So there are more and more commutations involved. So first there is b, then there is commutation of ab, then there is 1 by 2 factorial into commutation of a with commutation of ab, and so on. Okay, so this is also a rule that you can get by expanding this operator in terms of a Taylor expansion and then using all the commutation rules of, the definition of commutation and all of that. Okay, so this is also something you can get. All right, you can see the derivation of this in the book probably. I don't remember if it is there, but I think at least you will get an idea of how to do it. But basically, it's all about Taylor expanding these exponential operators and then using the definition of the commutation relation. Okay. All right. So now let's look at some other operators. Okay. I realize that there are too many operators here and too much, it's becoming a bit abstract, but soon you will be applying all of it. That's why I try to give you at least one problem in every class so that you know why and how it is applied. Okay. So so now this is inverse and unitary. This you have already studied in the previous semester. Okay, I hope you remember. So if you have a matrix A, you can take its inverse, right? You know how to get the inverse of that matrix. So similarly, it's the same funda here. Okay, the inverse of an operator A is denoted by A inverse, and it is such that A inverse into A is I, is the unit operator, and A into A inverse is also I, which is the unit operator. And obviously, when does an inverse exist? The condition that inverse has to exist is satisfied only when the determinant of the operator A is non-zero, right? So the determinant should be finite, only then you can see that the inverse of the operator exists. Okay, so remember, whenever you have some confusion in understanding what an operator is, imagine it to be a matrix. Okay, and then everything will be clear. Okay, so you know what a matrix is, and now if you have to find the inverse of that matrix, you know how to do it. Okay, and that is the same funda that is applied here. All right. Then obviously you know that or in matrix operations also the order in matrix multiplication the order is very important. So as you know, A operator into B inverse operator is not the same as B inverse into A operator, right? Because the order is very important in matrix multiplication as well as in operators. Okay. So in general, A into B inverse is not equal to B inverse into A. Again, if you have a product of four operators, A, B, C, D, and you take the whole inverse, then what you have to do? You have to do D inverse, C inverse, B inverse, A inverse. Okay, the order kind of reverses if you take the inverse. And if you have A power n whole inverse, you are going to get A inverse whole power n. Okay. So these are some of the rules that you already know from the previous semester, right? So it's the same set of rules here. There's nothing changing. Okay. Next is a unitary operator. Again, unitary operator is something you have already learned in the previous semester. What is a unitary operator? It is an operator which satisfies the condition that the inverse of that operator is equal to the adjoint of that operator, right? So the inverse is equal to the Hermitian adjoint. That is, U inverse is equal to U dagger. Only when this condition is satisfied, you say that that operator U is a unitary operator. Okay. So U inverse U will give you I, obviously. And because U inverse is equal to U dagger, you can substitute U inverse with as U dagger and you get U dagger U is I. And I is obviously whether you write it as U inverse U or U inverse, it's the same thing, right? At least for I. So you can also write I as U into U dagger. Okay, I hope this is clear. Please stop me and ask me questions if you don't follow anything, okay? All right. Now the product of two unitary operators is also unitary, okay? So if U and V are two unitary operators, so you have to first keep in mind that if I'm saying that U and V both are unitary operators, it means that U inverse is equal to U dagger as well as V inverse is equal to V dagger. That is when it will be that both these operators are unitary. So if U and V are unitary operators, then the product of two unitary operators is also unitary. How will you see that? You can just write, right? First of all, you know that U into U dagger is I, okay, and V into V dagger is I. Now, if we are saying that the product of two unitary operators is also unitary, we have to say that UV into UV whole dagger will also be equal to I. So we have to prove that. Okay, so you can see that UV into UV whole dagger is nothing but now this dagger, if you take it inside, the order will reverse. So you have UV into V dagger into U dagger. And we already know that because V is unitary, V into V dagger is I. You get U dagger, so you get U into I into U dagger. So I is just an identity matrix, right? So if you multiply with it, nothing changes. So you can, it's like multiplying some number with 1. So nothing is going to change. So ultimately this simplifies to U into U dagger, which is equal to I. So we have shown that the product of two unitary operators is also unitary. Okay. The above can be generalized to any number of. So this is just for two operators, product of two operators. You can also generalize it to multiple operators. So U, V, W, X into U, V, W, X whole dagger. Also you will get I. Okay. So you can generalize it to any number of operators here. All right. So now we come to an important part, which is eigenvalue and eigenvectors of an operator. Now, again, you remember from your previous semester when we learned about matrices, how to find eigenvalue and eigenvectors of a matrix, right? So the way to find eigenvalue or eigenvector of a matrix, the first thing you do is, if I've given you a matrix, let's say that matrix is A, then what you do is, you do AX equal to lambda X, right? That is the first thing. So that is the definition of an eigenvalue problem, right? So if you have some operator which is acting on a vector and it gives you some constant, okay, A can in general be complex, so it gives you some constant into the vector itself, then this is an eigenvalue eigenvector problem, right? So in this case, A is the operator, psi is the state vector, A is the, small a is the, oh, I'm sorry, this should be eigenvalue, okay? I think I made a typo while writing. So small a should be a eigenvalue, okay? And okay, so that is how you will get the three. If you have a 3 × 3 matrix, then you can get 3 eigenvalues, right? Because you are actually solving this equation. Okay, so A is actually the eigenvalue. Okay, like how we write AX equal to lambda X. So lambda is the eigenvalue. So here A, small a is the eigenvalue. Okay. All right. So here you can see this is the operator I. If you just multiply I with this vector psi, you'll get 1 into psi. Okay. So you have unit operator, I is a unit operator, psi is an eigenvector, and 1 into psi. So 1 is the eigenvalue. Okay. So this kind of thing we have already seen in matrices. Similarly, if you have A operating on psi, you get small a into the ket psi. And if you have A power n operating on psi, you get small a power n into psi. Okay. And if you have f of a, the function of the operator operating on the ket psi, then you're going to get f of a, the function of a into ket psi. Okay. All right. And similarly, like you can just extrapolate it. So if f of a is e power ia, then e power ia operating on psi will get e power I into small a operating on psi. So this you can extrapolate it. Okay. So we will, I have in this, after today's class, I've given you one homework problem also. We'll look at it. And there you will have to solve the eigenvector problem. Okay. Now, there are some useful theorems in relation to these eigenvalues, eigenvectors, and in relation to Hermitian and unitary operators. So one of the theorem is, for a Hermitian operator, all of its eigenvalues are real, and the eigenvectors corresponding to different eigenvalues are orthogonal. So let's read it again. So for a Hermitian operator, what is a Hermitian operator? So let's imagine a Hermitian operator A. So if it is Hermitian, it means that A dagger will be equal to A. Okay, so that is a Hermitian operator. All of its eigenvalues are real. So if you do the eigenvalue eigenvector problem using this operator now, using this operator A, you will see that you have to do A, operator A into psi will give you small a into psi. So this small a, they are saying the eigenvalue. So that means the small a is real and the eigenvectors corresponding to different eigenvalues are orthogonal. Okay, so now I think we can get it. So if A dagger is equal to A, so if A is a Hermitian operator, then this operator acting on some state vector phi n, some eigenvector phi n, you will get A n into phi n. Okay, so this A n has to be a real number if A is Hermitian, and the phi n, all the different, so this is A n, which means in general there can be n eigenvalues and so n eigenvectors. So all these different eigenvectors are orthogonal to each other, which means that if you take scalar product of any two eigenvectors, so phi m and phi n, scalar product of phi m and phi n, you will get a delta. Okay. Okay, you will get a discrete Dirac delta function. So Dirac delta is what? Or what is the delta? This is delta mn, which means that this number or this function is equal to 1 if m is equal to n, and it is equal to 0 if m is not equal to n. Okay, So that means this is an orthogonal. These two are orthogonal eigenvectors. Okay. So this is an important theorem to remember. Okay. Obviously, there's a proof also of this theorem, but I'm not really going to go into that. You can see the proof in the book. Okay. Now, second theorem is eigenstates of a Hermitian operator define a complete set of mutually orthonormal basis sets. Okay. So basis set, you know, right? What is a basis set? Basis set is an eigenvector. So all of these, in this case, all these 5 n's are part of the basis set. Okay, so they are saying that the basis set is complete and it is also a complete set of mutually orthonormal basis set. Okay, so all the eigenstates are orthogonal to each other. Plus, if you take the norm of the individual eigenstates, they are orthonormal, which means the norm is equal to 1. Okay, all right. The operator is diagonal in this eigenbasis with its diagonal elements equal to eigenvalue. Okay, so obviously, if this follows the uh, right? If the operator follows the eigenvalue eigenvector equation, then you know that the operator acting on this basis on this eigenvector, they will be diagonal. Okay, because you know that when you do a psi equal to lambda psi, then the lambdas are all the eigenvalues. So if you have psi as an like a column vector, right, which has n such numbers, then you will have a column, a diagonal matrix which will have lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3, etc. up to lambda n. Okay, that is how it will go. All right. So the basis set is unique if the operator has no degenerate eigenvalue. What do you mean by degenerate eigenvalue? Degenerate eigenvalue means that two eigen. So if you have, let's say, a matrix, a 3 cross 3 matrix. Now you want to find the eigenvalues of that matrix. Okay. So because it's a 3 cross 3 matrix, you'll get 3 eigenvalues. Now say two of those eigenvalues are same and one is different. Then you say those two eigenvalues which are the same, that is called the degenerate eigenvalue. Okay. And if all three eigenvalues are same, you say the all three eigenvalues are degenerate. Okay. So there is no unique eigenvalue. But if you say if you get that two eigenvalues are same, one is different, then you say there are two unique eigenvalues. Okay. Or there are two non-degenerate eigenvalues. Okay. So they are saying that if basis set is unique, if the operator has no degenerate eigenvalues. Okay. And basis set is not unique. Okay. If there is any degeneracy. Okay. So this is what it is saying. Now, third theorem is if two, we will like I think you will. Okay, I think you will understand this when you do the problem. So I've given you one homework problem and you will understand this properly when you do it. Okay. If two Hermitian operators A and B commute, okay, that is if A commutation of A and B is 0, and A and B are both Hermitian, then, and if A has no degenerate eigenvalues, then each eigenvector of A is also an eigenvector of B. So what is it saying? Suppose you have two Hermitian operators A and B. Okay, A is Hermitian, B is Hermitian, and these two Hermitian operators commute with each other so that you get this relation, commutation of A, B is 0. And if A has no degenerate eigenvalues, okay, so you found the eigenvalues of A and you saw that none of the eigenvalues are matching with any other eigenvalues. Okay, so all eigenvalues are unique. If that is the case, then you can say that eigenvalue of A, eigenvectors of A is also the eigenvector of B because these two are commuting. Okay. We can also construct a common orthonormal basis that is made up of eigenvectors of A and B. Okay. All right. Then eigenvalues of an anti-Hermitian operator are purely imaginary. So what is one of the conditions we know? That eigenvalues of a Hermitian operator are always real. Okay. They are always real. And eigenvalue of anti-Hermitian operator is imaginary or 0. Okay, so these are like complementary rules or theorems. Then next one is eigenvalues of a unitary operator are complex numbers. Okay, with moduli equal to 1. So if you have, what is a unitary operator? Remember what is a unitary operator. A unitary operator means U inverse will be equal to U dagger. Okay, if that condition is satisfied, then it is a unitary operator. So it is saying that eigenvalues of a unitary operator, if you find the eigenvalues of such an operator, they are in general complex, and the moduli, okay, the norm of those eigenvalues, okay, the norm of those eigenvalues will be equal to 1. That is what it is saying. Also, eigenvectors of a unitary operator that has no degenerate eigenvalues are mutually orthogonal. That is also one of the things. All right. Okay. So now I think we have covered these rules for Hermitian operators and eigenvalues and eigenvectors. Now we come to some small like unitary transformation. So what we mean by unitary transformation? So if we have a unitary operator that is operating on a ket psi, we will get a new operator which is psi dash. Similarly, if you have U dagger operating on psi, on a bra psi, then you'll get a new bra which is psi dash. Okay, and any operator A can be transformed using unitary operators. Okay, so for every operator A, you will have a basically a unitary operator, which if you write it in this manner, U into A into U dagger, it will give you a new operator which is A dash. Okay. And this A dash will in general be diagonal. Like how in the last semester we looked at diagonalization of a matrix. This is what it is doing. Okay. You are basically diagonalizing the matrix. Okay. All right. So similarly, if you multiply, so instead of doing it here, you can also multiply this with A dash into U. So then you'll get U into A into U dagger U. U dagger U is I because U is a unitary operator. So you will get A dash U is equal to UA. Then if you want to multiply this one with U dagger, you get U dagger into A dash into U, which is U dagger into U into A, which is A. Okay. So this is more like how to use a unitary operator and convert it to a new operator. Okay. So the way to do that is you have an operator, you multiply one side with U, the other side with U dagger, you will get a new operator, A dash. That is the way to do it. Okay. So for operators, A dash will be the transformed operator and you are transforming it using the U operator. And A is the original operator, which you can get by again reverse transforming the A dash operator, okay, which is A is equal to U dagger into A dash into U. Okay, now we see the properties of unitary transformation and then I think we will stop after that. So if an operator A is Hermitian, its transformed A dash is also Hermitian. Okay, so if A is Hermitian, then after doing unitary transformation of the operator, you will get A dash. Then it is saying that A dash operator is also Hermitian. Okay. So if that is the case, then A dagger is A because A is Hermitian. So A dash dagger is also A dash. Okay, because A dash is a Hermitian operator. Then eigenvalues of A and those of A dash are the same. Okay. For a unitary operator, the eigenvalues of the original operator and the transformed operator are the same. Then if A and B, if the commutation of A and B is equal to A, where A is the complex number, then commutation of A dash B dash is also equal to A. Okay, the commutation of the transformed operators is also equal to A. If the commutation of the original operator is also A. Then this is the linearity property. This I think very easy to understand. So if A is equal to beta into B plus gamma into C operator, then A dash will be beta into B dash plus gamma into C dash. And if A is equal to alpha into BCD, then A dash will be alpha into B dash, C dash, D dash. Okay. So here remember here the order is not changing. It just all these three operators are becoming the transformed operators. Okay. And then you have psi dash into A dash into chi dash will give you psi into A into chi. Okay. So where basically psi dash is nothing but the operator U dagger acting on the brass side, and chi dash is nothing but the operator U acting on the ket chi. Okay. Also these two rules are there. Psi dash, scalar product of psi dash into chi dash is scalar product of psi chi, and norm of psi dash is equal to norm of psi. Okay, these two are also satisfied. Then you have U into A into U dagger whole power n. Okay, this is nothing but U, just A power n, and both sides you have, one side you have U, one side you have U dagger. Okay, and then U into F of A into U dagger is nothing but F of U into A into U dagger. Okay, and this we know this is nothing but A dash. This is the transformed operator. So this is F of A dash. Okay, obviously all of these can be proved, but I'm not really going into that because otherwise this whole semester I'll keep doing only this. But we have to go to the actual problems as well. All right. So now comes the homework problem. So now that you have seen all this, okay, now you'll kind of apply it to a set of operators. So as I told you, in the discrete space, operators are nothing but matrices. Okay, so here I have given you two operators, A and B. A and B both are 3 cross 3 matrices. Okay, so now you have to do the following. First of all, you have to find are A and B Hermitian. Okay, so that is the first thing. Second thing, do A and B commute? That is also you have to find out. Third question, find the eigenvalues and eigenvectors of A and B. So for both A and B, you need to find both eigenvalues and eigenvectors of A and B. Okay. Then D is, are the eigenvectors of each operator orthonormal? Right, now you know what you mean by orthonormality. Okay, orthonormality means the norm of the individual eigenvectors should be equal to 1, and the scalar product between any two eigenvectors should be equal to 0. Right, that is what you mean by orthonormality. Okay, so that is what you have to check. And then the last one, okay, then it is verify that U dagger into B into U is a diagonal matrix, or is diagonal, where U is the unitary operator, or at least you have to prove in the next step. I've said that verify that U inverse is equal to U dagger, which means you are verifying that U is a unitary operator. Anyway, so U is a matrix, and that is made up of the normalized eigenvectors of B. Okay, so this is basically the eigenvalue eigenvector problem which you have done in the previous semester, but maybe you'll see that for one of these matrices you'll get eigenvalue which is degenerate. Okay, and if you get degenerate eigenvalues, you need to see how to get eigenvectors when you have degenerate eigenvalues. So that is like a small challenge. And I think if you just find it out, you will be able to get how to do that. And then you can solve all of these questions. Okay, so this is like a revision of the previous semester. But if you do this, then you won't have any problem in doing this chapter. All right, so I will stop here. Let me know if you have any questions.